this is where we discuss the possibilities.
Started or
with gratitude.
Hey guys, Joe Klemczewski, founder of the Diet Doc, here with Dr. Kori Propst, and we're going to be talking about motivational mastery today with a little bit of a twist, because we usually talk about motivation, hence this topic category, because it's really something that we do a lot of, Kori. I mean, we are coaches, we're clinicians, we're entrepreneurs, we train Diet Doc program owners to build thriving businesses. We're constantly seeking to encourage clients, from soccer moms to executives to pro athletes, to change their lives, enhance performance. Yet we're not always on our game. I think it can be difficult sometimes, because when you live in this world where everything's rah, rah, go team, achieve, succeed, if you don't feel that every single day, you might feel like, well, what's wrong with me? Everybody else is doing so amazing. That's one of the things I don't like about the whole self-development world. But it could even go darker and deeper than that.
Yeah.
We are just on the heels, as we record this, of the Anthony Bourdain suicide. They've been doing tributes and all that kind of thing. And anytime a celebrity figure does this, takes their own life, struggles with depression, even maybe entering into a rehab program, you look at, oh my gosh, how can that person be depressed? They have it all. I personally work with an organization. I volunteer time to Soldier Dogs, which was started by vets, U.S. military vets, just to help suicide prevention. 22 vets commit suicide every day. 45,000 people in our country commit suicide every day. And I don't necessarily want to make this all about that, but there's kind of a trajectory from just not having some good days to falling into depression to ultimately saying, wow, this is just not worth it anymore. And so there's a lot of stuff there. You are a psychologist, and so I know you have some insight into this that other people might benefit from.
Well, thank you. I think we have a very important job as clinicians and as coaches. I mean, even if we're not psychologists or counselors, we're in positions where we're working very closely with people, and we need to be proficient at understanding the different contexts of their lives and what they're going through emotionally and physically and intellectually and spiritually. And oftentimes, I mean, we become very close with the people that we work with, and so we're hearing things from them that we need to pay attention to in case we do need to refer them to someone who can really help in the ways that we might not be able to. You know, I recognize that, what is it, about 15 million people per year in the US are struggling with depression at any one time. And it operates on a continuum, of course. You know, you have major depression, and then you have like seasonal affective disorder. No matter where you are on the continuum, it's going to affect you just in terms of your functionality on a day-to-day basis and your level of energy and your level of vitality. So when we're talking about motivation, that's a continuum of energy and what we have the ability to do based on our moods, our physical symptoms, the level of fatigue we're experiencing day in and day out, and there are very specific things that we can do in learning to recognize if we're in a space that maybe we need to reach out and get support around, or if it's really something that we can kind of take into our own hands and have a level of agency and autonomy around. But it's a big topic, and so I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah, I know, and we do. We spend a lot of time talking about motivation and how to stay in fifth gear.
Yeah.
And so I don't even want to spend necessarily that much time, because I know we're going to come back to that topic. And there are all kinds of great ways to do that. There are tools, techniques, there are mindset things, there are environmental things that we structure our day around. But when you're not toggling between fourth and fifth gear, but you feel like you're stuck or in reverse,
or in neutral. Yeah.
Right. I mean, here's one of the things I know about suicide. One of my friends, who's also a psychologist, works in suicide prevention. Mm-hmm. And somebody who is a deep feeler, and I think you and I have some of these qualities in us.
Oh, yes.
PET scans show that when somebody is depressed, you can feel that as intensely as physical pain. Like if somebody stabbed you in the leg, that's the same kind of trauma that some people can feel emotionally just when they're depressed. So I would like to hear from you if for somebody who may not struggle with that or versus somebody who does, is there a difference in what they're perceiving?
Someone who is struggling with depression?
Well, I think of maybe somebody like Anthony Bourdain or Robin Williams, who intentionally, made this decision that even though I have so much positiveness in my life, something is so painful that I'm calling it quits.
I talked to a friend recently who I found out attempted suicide at one point, and I didn't know this about him. And I asked him, because he had everything ready, ready to go, ready to do it, and didn't. And my big question, I didn't even think to ask, well, what led you there? I wanted to know what stopped him. And what stopped him was the thought of, what about everyone in my life and how this is going to affect them? Not just everyone, but what about my pets? I mean, because we could become very close with our pets too. And so for him, it was a matter of moving out of this insular me, I being the center to this more collective humanity. Here is how this act is going to affect everyone around me place. And, when I am working with individuals who are struggling the most, even if it's not depression, that's what I see. It's an insular, internal, I don't like to use the word selfish, but there is a selfishness about it, because their view it's very polarized and it's right here, as opposed to, okay, wait, let's broaden the scope here and the focus outward to understand that I'm not alone. And that's the big thing in this, is I'm not alone in this. And someone who is deep in depression is they have that in many cases, the belief that they're by themselves.
I see that a lot. Every single year in our Soldier Dogs for Independence chapter, I get the opportunity to hear a lot of these vets tell their stories. And these are guys who had the same thing. I mean, they had a gun in their mouth. And then, a couple of them have had, one of them had a daughter walk in to the bathroom with a gun in his mouth, and that stopped him and made him feel like, holy shit, do I really want to go through with this? And loved ones and spouses. And one guy I remember, was loading his gun ready to take his life. And I think his dad called him on the phone just to say, hi, you want to grab a beer?
And vets have been in the situation, right, where they're on a team usually, right, and they're working with other people in very tight quarters, and they're not by themselves.
And to your point, though, their lives are so intensely myopic. You are thrown into a war situation, and you're told the enemy, kill, or you're going to die. Everything is heightened. And then they come back to this world, and it's like, wait a second, there's that's gone. So there's that sense of not only PTSD, but the adrenaline is gone. Their intent and purpose and reason for, living is now not the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it. Again, 22 vets a day do this, but I think some of those same principles or feelings are exactly what you're describing. Is it's all about that one situation. And if they start broadening out to include more people reaching out for help to discuss it, or just looking at adding new layers to their lives, I think that would bode well for anybody with that level of depression.
Definitely, I agree with you. It's taking, you say this a lot in our podcast, that 3,000-foot view, as opposed to this one place, this one time, this one instance, this one feeling, and recognizing that there's a much bigger world out there. But it comes down to, I think in this case, many times they have to shift their identity in many ways, and it's not going to be easy for them to do it on their own. They need support. They need other people who can be there to listen to them and help guide them and shift their perspective. And I think that a lot of individuals who are suffering through depression feel very alone. They don't feel like, even if they did reach out for support, that there would be really anyone who understands or gets it. And I've heard that from many people who I've worked with before with depression. So,
you hit on a big topic that I want to stay on for a second, and that is to look beyond yourself. And we did a podcast a while ago on gratitude, I think a couple actually. And here's something interesting that I did. It wasn't for depression, but it had a very unique benefit. So I have different writing groups, partners, people that I do things with, nonfiction, fiction, poetry, all that kind of stuff. And I like to stay engaged in that part of my life. So as a writing prompt with someone a while ago, I think in the last year, I said, hey, let's, as a writing prompt, let's write a suicide letter. And as morbid as that might sound, it wasn't because I was ready to, just off myself. Right. I said, I think that's going to really focus you on what's most important in your life. And of course I wanted a creative element to it. So, pick a topic, pick a way to do this, some kind of literary device. But what that did for me, because you can't write that without feeling a lot of stuff.
Oh man, yeah.
Because this is how I want to say goodbye to the people who mean the most to me. And as you're writing something like that, draft after draft after draft, you realize how much you have to be grateful for, like how much you love people in your life and how much they love you. And I'm telling you, what a great way to realize, wait a second, there's a lot to live for. And just this exercise of making me focus on that really brought out some depth that I think a lot of people never realize.
I agree with you. And you're capitalizing on what the real value is of having someone to give you those prompts. Someone in the throes of depression isn't likely going to be in the space to be able to say, wait a second, hang on, let me write a gratitude letter, or let me write a suicide note, but view it from this, view it this way in order to get myself really, really in tune with and aligned with the fact that I'm really not alone. If someone is writing a suicide letter, that's how they're planning on ending it. And that sort of objective way of viewing things isn't as accessible to them, I guess is the best way to put it.
So this reminds me, the writing school I went to in Connecticut, one of the winners of a book award that we have there, a great nonfiction writer, she is somebody who had a suicidal background and now has spent a lot of her spare time working in suicide prevention. And she discussed in taking those calls, the first thing when somebody is calling into a suicide prevention hotline, here's how we redirect them into just that feeling of who might miss you. Are you sure you want to say goodbye to them? But my question to you, Kori, is with all of these things I'm seeing now after Anthony Bourdain, all these suicide hotlines, do people who are that just emotionally savaged reach out to those often enough? How do we make it more accessible? You said, people who are going to potentially take their own lives or they're in that level of depression just don't have those kinds of prompts or people. So how do we bridge that gap?
I think then it's on us and the culture to make it known better, more effectively, that they are out there, so everyone is hearing it and everyone is seeing it. And I think a lot of people would hear that and be like, well, then doesn't that just kind of make suicide kind of a non-issue? Because if we're talking about it all the time, then it starts to not even matter, right? We could make that argument too, but that's not really what happens. So the more people have a sense of this is available, this is a big deal, this is an issue, people care, there are all of these resources available to you, I think we're changing the game in terms of them looking at it as a positive thing. And I'm not sure I answered your question very well, but
I consider this, first of all, I am a very big advocate of full autonomy, including end of life decision making. So I remember, I think I shared with you a story one time of a woman who had Alzheimer's, and she had decided, look, I am not going to spend the last months or years of my life putting my family through that. That's not how I want to live. So she did everything in the world she wanted to do leading up to that time, and she let all of her friends, family, children, grandchildren know that at some point I'm going to say goodbye to you, and I'm going to use this cocktail and so forth. And so the entire story was the most loving, amazing thing. On the day she decided I'm getting too far into this disease process, there's no way I'm coming out. So she spent the day doing everything she wanted with her husband. They took a walk, they had a picnic, they did this. She said all of her goodbyes, and she self-directedly passed away in her husband's arms. I mean, I'm tearing up just thinking about that, because I think that's the useful way of saying we should have that kind of autonomy. But of the 45,000 people who take their own lives every year, how many would really make that decision if they just had one person reach out to them and say, you know what, you matter?
And I'm thinking about all the times that this is a really emotional topic.
It's a tough one.
All the times that I've just been out in the world, say I'm at a grocery store, I'm walking down the street through the mall, and I see someone who just, they make me stop. They make me think something different. Like, I wonder if he's okay. I wonder what's happening with that person. If we as kind, compassionate citizens were in those moments willing, and not just willing, but wanting to express that compassion towards that person, not even caring what their response is going to be, because they may look at you like you're nuts, because no one ever does that. But to walk up to them and say, hi, you look really sad, are you okay? I've done this at the grocery store when I come up to,
Wow.
have my stuff run through by the checker, and they may not give me any eye contact, or they seem really down and, kind of just, and I'll say something. Hi, are you okay today? And it, sometimes that they just they start opening up, and other times they're like, yeah, I'm okay. But to have that attention, and just to know that there's some stranger cared enough.
I did not expect to go this direction, but I joke a lot about being introverted. And I just posted yesterday or the day before that on the Big 5 personality skills test,
Mhm.
I had a 4 percentile on extroversion. But the funny thing is, the thing that motivates me to be more outgoing is exactly what you just said, is to have an impact in somebody else's life. And so the times that I make myself say something or be extroverted when I'm really not is exactly what you just said. And to see the impact it has on somebody else is fuel for that. It adds to connection. We have a homeless guy who sits on our bench outside of our building every day. And he is a quiet guy. You know, he's not out there with a sign looking for money or help. He just sits out there every day, moves from one side of the street to the other, depending on where the shade is. And, you know, we'll go out there when we take our dog out to the bathroom. We'll let her go up and just sit next to him so he can pet her. And, you know, we say hi to him every morning and all that. And, you know, we've taken him bottles of water and all that. And it's like what you said, man. I mean, here is a human being. How difficult is it just to say hi?
Well, that's it. How much energy does it really take us to do that? And to even think, like, why would I even be thinking about how much energy it takes me to do that? It's just silly to me. You know, the Greater Good Science Center, I don't know if you're familiar with that website. It's an awesome one. And they have a podcast, but they do a lot of research through there. And they've done a lot of research on just what impacts and what influences happiness. And they've done a lot of research on acts of kindness. And they've shown that not only do acts of kindness help the individuals who are the recipients of kindness, just like we're describing, but the individuals who give those acts of kindness end up feeling much more motivated and alive and purposeful, and like their life has meaning. And so it's goodness all around.
And I know we got to kind of wrap up this topic. And so I did, for the sake of this one, knowing it was going to be this deep, I did bring my Freud glasses. This one. I think I should wear these for all of our deep discussions.
I want some.
But we were at Barnes & Noble, and Trey last night said, you got to get those, Jad. You can make those work.
People listening can't see you. They better get
that's true. Well, you're gonna have to look. We'll make Steve use this as the thumbnail picture. But guys, we did spend a lot of time going from, you know, what we typically talk about, which is success, all the way to suicide. And in between, there are so many steps in either direction that take you there just one thought at a time. And Kori often describes how to change a thought, just to be able to say, look, you know, I had a negative thought. I had a bad day. I had a bad conversation. Doesn't mean that's going to be the rest of my life. Yeah. To be able to step back and recognize that. We have so much content in earlier podcasts, and we're going to always circle back to those kinds of things that lead to ultimate transformation, contentment, and happiness. But we're going to all have some pretty shitty days too. And life is not always easy. So to reach out, to have that kind of support network, to look internally at what you're grateful for are some really, really big concepts, Kori, and I appreciate your expertise.
Can I say one more thing? So I was just in a conversation yesterday with someone who said something to me, and I'm gonna, this is not verbatim, but it was to the effect of, you know, why would anyone want to help me? Why would anyone want to help me? And it made me sad that this person actually thinks that there's no one out there who would genuinely want to give their time and energy and support to him. But we got into this discussion about how people actually do love to help if you'll ask for it, and if they're aware that you are in need of it. And we have this thing culturally about not asking for it, and not even knowing how to ask for it, because we don't want to be a burden, and we don't want to put undue pressure on someone to do it because they feel like they have to.
It is so different than other cultures.
Oh, it is. And so I don't know. I think I just wanted to say that we need to get better at understanding that foundationally we are collective. We want our fellow man, friends, family, whoever, to thrive more than we want them to, be on the outside and feel awful and horrible. But oftentimes we're unaware because no one is saying anything, but we're also walking around like zombies because we're in our own little worlds and not necessarily paying attention enough to what's going on around us and with the people in our lives.
And if I had to define our entire company in one word, I think you'd know what that word would be. It's community.
Yeah.
And it's something we talk about every day in 1,000 different ways. And that is important for everybody. And anybody out there listening to this now or later, whether it's with us, reaching out to a friend, I love getting personal email like this and communication messages from not only our clients and owners, but sometimes just random listeners, readers, and just reach out and connect with somebody because you'll be so happy and so surprised at where that can lead.
Absolutely.
So on that note, guys, thanks again, as always, for being a part of our podcast community. And we look forward to more. We're going to keep moving forward with all kinds of content in nutrition, fitness, health, life, motivation, relationships, everything that can help you live a more fulfilled life. So thank you for being a part of us.
Thanks, guys.